It's late May of the year 1941. A two-ship German battle group attempts to break off into the Atlantic on its mission to raid Allied merchant convoys. But due to an unplanned string of events, German Commander Admiral Lütjens is compelled into facing the Royal Navy's home fleet, attempting to prevent the Bismarck from entering the open Atlantic. A fierce artillery trade-off ensued, resulting in the sinking of HMS Hood, a symbolic British warship. Enraged, the Royal Navy now employs every possible means to track down and destroy the German raiders. The hunt has begun. While the hunt for the Bismarck is on, you too can rule the seas. This video is sponsored by World of Warships Blitz. Free to play via the App Store or Google Play. World of Warships Blitz allows you to command some of history's greatest warships in thrilling tactical combat. And if you download the game using the link in the description below, once you have skippered to level 4, you will receive a bonus prize pack. With thousands of players and hundreds of ships and customizations to choose from, it falls on you, Captain, as to how you will conquer the waves. It is the cool, breezy morning of the 24th of May, 1941. A mere hour has passed since the German task force sank the iconic HMS Hood and considerably damaged another British capital ship, HMS Prince of Wales, forcing her to retreat. Both German vessels saw great elation among their crews following the spectacular victory. But the commander of the battle group, Admiral Lütjens, was already preoccupied sketching plans for the immediate future, as he had no doubt that the threat posed by the Royal Navy was only temporarily deterred. The most impending problem for the Germans was the damage that the Bismarck sustained in the course of the recent battle. 2 hits dealt by the Prince of Wales caused the pride of the German Navy to both leak precious fuel and at the same time allowed a couple thousand tons of salt water into another compartment, which made her slightly list to port and down by the bow. Technically, it wasn't a huge issue though, as the ship's artillery, propulsion, and even the crew remained intact. But with less than 3,000 tons of fuel available, Lütjens had a narrow set of options to choose from. The Operation Rheinübung was no longer feasible due to the Bismarck's damage affecting her range, and the plan was no longer a secret to the Royal Navy, which, as Lütjens expected, was about to use all available means to neutralize his task force. The German admiral had to either turn and use one of the available passages to get back to the nearest friendly ports in Norway, or carry on into the North Atlantic and eventually reach the safe haven of German-occupied France. The Norwegian option seemed more reasonable, but Lütjens expected the possible presence of British heavy units in the area between them and Scapa Flow, and considered this route as too risky. Instead, he decided to steam towards Saint-Nazaire. The French coast was further away, but the route through the open Atlantic offered a better opportunity to shake off the British pursuers and a much better position to attack Allied convoys once the Bismarck was fully operational again. Moreover, Lütjens successfully used the French option months earlier, coming back to the port of Brest with 2 other German battle cruisers. Still, the Bismarck's group was shadowed by 2 British heavy cruisers equipped with superior radar, followed by the damaged HMS Prince of Wales. So the chase group under Admiral John Tovey had reliable information on the German positions. The problem was that Tovey's force was more than 350 miles away, and the damaged Bismarck was still able to cruise at 28 knots, about the same speed as that of the British heavy warships were capable of. Thus, unless she was slowed down, there was little chance of her being intercepted. In the late afternoon of the 24th of May, Lütjens took advantage of a rain squall, made a sharp turn to starboard, and briefly engaged with the trailing British group, granting cover for the undamaged Prinz Eugen to detach unseen and steam away to harass Atlantic convoys. The Bismarck resumed her original course, with all 3 British ships now trailing to her port side. But several hours later, a new threat emerged. One of Tovey's ships, aircraft carrier HMS Victorious, adjusted her course, which eventually enabled her to launch a squadron of torpedo bombers in an attempt to damage and slow down the Bismarck. yet inexperienced pilots mistakenly prepared to attack HMS Norfolk, which alerted German anti-aircraft gunners who immediately opened fire at the enemy. But none of the attacking planes were shot down, and the British were able to launch 9 torpedoes at the Bismarck, though only one reached its target, hitting the battleship's main armor belt with no significant damage. Soon, the chase entered open waters, and the pursuers were forced to adopt zigzag maneuverings in order to avoid German U-boats that might have been patrolling the area, according to British intelligence reports. As a result, the Bismarck was repeatedly out of range of Suffolk's radar. Coincidentally, Lütjens ordered a 270 turn to starboard, hoping to break off radar contact, circling behind her pursuers. Luckily, this move worked, and the German admiral adjusted his course to France, fooling the British at the same time, who upon losing radar contact, steamed west at first, and then, early in the morning, dispersed to seek the Bismarck visually. It came as a shock for the British Admiralty, as many of the Royal Navy ships were already low on fuel, and the actual position of the enemy battleship was now a mystery. From then on, the plan to neutralize the warship which sank HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy, hung in the balance. But just like the British, the Germans were also making mistakes. Admiral Lütjens remained unaware of the fact that he actually got rid of his pursuit and didn't maintain radio silence, allowing code breakers at Bletchley Park to determine the Bismarck's approximate position and that she was steaming towards the French coast. Hope sparked again as the narrow search area gave a small chance to locate the Bismarck's position before she could make it safely into the range of the Luftwaffe operating from French air bases. The odds were still against the British though, as HMS Prince of Wales, Suffolk, Victorious and Repulse were forced to break off the search due to fuel shortages. This meant that Admiral Tovey's only capital ships still in action were the HMS King George V and the old battleship HMS Rodney, both far away from the Bismarck's approximate position. In the morning of the 26th of May, the British Navy had a much-needed stroke of luck, as one of the Catalina flying boats, which had flown from its base on Loch Earn in Northern Ireland, accidentally spotted the trail of the oil slick on the sea. Shortly, the Bismarck was located just short of 700 miles northwest of Brest. Seemingly, this was good news, but a position also meant that in less than a day, the Bismarck would reach the safe area covered by the Luftwaffe and U-boats. Time was running out, and the only chance the British had to intercept the German battleship was the Force H, a naval formation based in Gibraltar, under the command of Vice Admiral James Somerville. As soon as Somerville was informed of the Bismarck's position, he detached a light cruiser HMS Sheffield to shadow the enemy and commanded the carrier HMS Ark Royal to immediately launch torpedo bombers. But the first squadron was not informed of Sheffield's orders and mistook it for the Bismarck. Luckily, the drop torpedoes were equipped with new yet unreliable magnetic detonators, and HMS Sheffield remained unscathed. Subsequently, the second squadron of Swordfish was launched, but this time equipped with older contact detonators. On this occasion, the aviators picked the target correctly, and despite heavy anti-aircraft fire, the torpedo attack finally yielded some results. The Bismarck was hit twice, as one torpedo hit midship with minor damage, and another exploded at the stern, jamming both battleships' rudders. Damage control teams managed to repair the starboard one, but the port rudder remained blocked at a turning position. This meant that the Bismarck lost her maneuverability and was unable to escape, being just a few hundred miles away from the safe zone. But even with crippled mobility, her powerful armaments and fire control systems were intact, a sufficient reason for bigger British vessels to keep their distance. 6 destroyers kept the Bismarck busy with torpedo attacks during the night, but it was not until the next morning when the final battle occurred. Eventually, the 3 remaining ships of Admiral Tovey's home fleet loomed on the grey horizon, preparing for a final battle. HMS Rodney and HMS King George V drew and fired first salvos at the slow-moving Bismarck. The German battleship returned fire with her forward turrets, yet managed to only fire short of HMS Rodney, as her ability to aim accurately was somewhat decreased due to erratic movement caused by the jammed rudder. But the British shells soon reached their target, causing initial damage and fires to break out on board. The two heavy cruisers joined the battle and aimed their turrets at the strafed German battleship. For the next 90 minutes, the Bismarck suffered relentless British fire as hundreds of shells struck the venerable German battle vessel, causing massive damage to the ship and huge casualties to the crew. Yet despite this persisting cannonade and detonating the scuttling charges by her crew, the Bismarck refused to sink. As Tovey's warships were dangerously low on fuel and shells, he sent them back to port, leaving HMS Dorsetshire to finish the job. Eventually, at 10:39 on the 27th of May, the Bismarck went under the waves. A little more than 100 of her sailors were rescued, while the majority that managed to abandon the sinking Bismarck were left to the mercy of the water, as British ships left the scene after the U-boat alarm. More than 2,000 German sailors shared the fate of the iconic battleship. The loss of the Bismarck was a heavy blow for the Kriegsmarine and also became a turning point in the war on Allied commerce convoys, as from that point on, German Naval Command abandoned the idea of using capital ships for raiding in favor of U-boats, which wreaked havoc on the northern Atlantic for the next 2 years. Still, the famous 8-day-long voyage of the Bismarck became a highlight of the Battle of the Atlantic and one of the most popular events of the Second World War in Europe.